Welcome to Avoice, a voice for creators. I'm your host, Daniel Norton. We've got a great episode this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the subject from last week. We got some call-ins for that. We're going to talk about, is photography art or not? And I'd love to get some more call-ins, hear what you guys say about that. And also some answers to the question of why we create. Why do we create photography? Before that, though, I'm going to talk a little bit about brands and fandom and what kind of the good and bad of that. So let's get to it. I want to talk a bit about the idea of associating ourselves with certain brands and placing the value of ourselves as creators on these brands. Associating ourselves is one thing, but the second part, I think, is where we run into little bits of trouble. Now, don't get me wrong, there's lots of positive things about being a fan, right? We can, it's immediately a connection we can have with people when we first meet them. Oh, I use that software or that camera or, would that type of guitar. So it's something you can talk about it. It brings people together in groups. But I also think it can be used, and it often becomes a point of contention in a way to separate people. And I think that can be a bad thing. And I'm going to talk about both things here, but I'm going to kind of focus on on the bad and maybe how we can make it the good. So I've been noticing more and more, and I don't know if that's because there's been in the last 5 years or so, like a really big technology push where lots of especially the camera brands are adapting and evolving, and they've always been battling out. I remember when I very first started, even back in the days of film, you had your Canon versus Nikon debate. Who has better autofocus? Who can hold a roll of film better? I don't know what people are talking about, but anyways, I was never part of that. But I get it. I get that we see things like sports teams or bands that we listen to or anything else, right? Oh, I'm a fan of this, so it's the best no matter what it does, hopefully, or you rag on your brand. Right, depending on how we do these things. But I just think that it feels like maybe because the online community is allowing more and more people to talk and join together, that you're seeing this push where people are like, oh, you must not be good because you use that brand, or vice versa. Oh, that person is a blah, blah, blah brand user, so they must be good. And this, I think, for new people coming in especially, can be just a bad influence. You don't want somebody coming into the trade of photography or even a serious hobbyist thinking that what makes somebody a professional is this certain brand. And again, this is nothing new. When I was coming up, we'd have the photo magazines and you'd have the very famous photographers being, I use Mamiya. This is not, again, a new thing, but I think it's creeped down to the level of individual photographers. Since we have so much more agency and freedom, and actually individual photographers can be kind of mini celebrities, if you will, themselves, right? They can have an Instagram with 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, and they basically build up their own base, or a YouTube channel where they talk about gear, right? And they might talk about certain brands more than others, and that will influence the market even so much if they have enough followers. And which is all cool, I guess, because then brands pay them, and that's a way to make money, and it's a thing, right? I'm not saying it's not, but I do think that when you are, we'll call it the little guy, right? You're not getting anything from the fact that this big YouTuber or this big Instagrammer is getting a deal from certain brands to tell you to use them. And if you are now spending your hard-earned money on this newest gear or changing what you're doing because this person's telling you to do it, this maybe isn't the best thing for you, right? Maybe you need to step back and say, hold on, do I really need to have the latest, greatest camera? Do I need this feature? Do I need this thing? And I'm sure this is true in other trades too. I'm just speaking photography because that is, of course, my primary knowledge base. So again, I like the idea of fan bases and loyalty, right? I think it's important. And when we go, let's say you pick up a brand new camera, a new mirrorless camera, let's say, and you're like, trying to figure out how to set this up, which would be best for me. You could find a Discord server or a Facebook group or Twitter, right? And you could, instead of going right to the brand and trying to look on their websites, which most brands don't necessarily have the humanness that like an individual creator has. So you go to their website looking and you see like the user's manual, right? Which isn't always the best thing in the world. Or you can find a 5-minute YouTube video from somebody who, uses this camera and they can tell you how to set it up. And that's great, right? That's fan created stuff. It should be non-biased in a way, right? Because it's actual people using it. And you can then look at this this YouTube community. Now you see there's 100 comments underneath. You start chatting with people. You join like a Discord server. Now you're on this Discord server for this brand, and you kind of connect to people. You help each other out. These kind of things, right? And this is powerful for brands to have, of course, because they like when their fans help other people out, and it's great for the fans because we can help each other out. But then if you're in some general photography Discord server and you post, hey, I got this, new camera and I'm trying to set up this, and you get 5 comments of, oh, why'd you waste your money on that? You should have had this. Why'd you do this? You should have got that. Oh, this brand has that feature much easier. This is the negative that I'm talking about. I think we can be happy with the gear we have. But I almost said proud, which is definitely not the right kind of language, right? We can be happy with the gear that we have without bashing people for the things for their choices. And that's what we have to be as the fans. We have to keep that in mind, right? When somebody is approaching photography, even if you've only been doing it a couple of years, if you've got some influence, you're out there, you're on board, you have some knowledge, don't immediately dismiss somebody because they're using something that you're not. In the end, the photography is what's important. That's the connecting tissue, right? That's what brings us together, not the brands, not this certain lens, not this certain filter that you use. This is it. I mean, on some level, it used to be that you'd be divided by like, oh, well, this is a group for portrait photographers. This is a group for fashion photographers. This is a group for product photographers. But at the same time, at least, and again, maybe I'm looking with rose-colored glasses, it seemed like people were much more open to, hey, you know what, I'm trying to learn this, can I get some advice? I mean, you did get the occasional person that was like, well, you should have taken that job if you didn't know how to do it. Yeah. Everybody has their first time of doing something, right? And people seeking advice on how to do something, how to improve themselves is a positive. It's one of the greatest things that we have as far as communities and as far as, the internet. It's one of the things that brings us together, right? So we can do that. And that's kind of where I'm at here. I don't know who's out there listening to this that might need to hear this, but you're more than the brands you use, right? You might have the brand new $5,000 Nikon or $5,000 Sony or $5,000 Canon, maybe I hit all the brands, or the newest lights or the newest this or the newest that. But don't base your value on that. Your value is as a creator. Your value is in your vision. Your value is that. And ultimately, that's what your clients or your fans should want, right? If they're only following you because you use the latest camera, then you're always going to have to be buying the latest camera for them to follow you. And then some people aren't going to be happy that you bought the latest camera, and then they're going to go away, and then there's people over here, and you're chasing something that doesn't benefit you, really. If people follow you because they appreciate your vision, because they appreciate your personality, those are the followers you want. Those are the clients you want. You want a client that will hire you based on what you're going to create for them, not based on this list of gear that they're supposedly looking for. And I guess I'm putting this out there to say, almost like a rallying cry to creatives. Let's build communities about like-minded creatives, not about brand fans. When you join a photo group, instead of being, I'm a such and such a user, how about let's talk about what we create, right? Because that's what our clients want. Your clients are hiring you for what you create. And yeah, obviously talking about the latest cool gear is fun. Most people that are into photography or videography are into buying the newest stuff or looking at it at least and being like, wow, that's really cool technologies. I'm not saying that's not a good thing. What I am saying is that your clients want you ideally, not your brands. They don't want gimmicks. They don't want some technique or trend. They might want it in the moment, but for a long-lasting client, what they want is you. What you want is a client that will come to you and say, hey, I'm noticing on Instagram everybody's using smoke bombs and we want to do a smoke bomb shoot. Can you do that for us? You don't want the client that will go, oh, that person's big in smoke bombs, we're going to hire them. That person's big in colored gels, we're going to hire them. That person's big. Because those people, those aren't your real long-term clients. And ultimately, if you want to do this successfully, you need long-term clients. They often say in business that, and this is true, in my opinion, in my experience, is that it's much easier to keep a client. It's much easier to keep a client than it is to get a new one. It's much cheaper, I should say. So you don't want to just constantly be chasing trends, looking for new clients that are looking for that trend. What you want is people that want to adapt and grow with you and will use you for the various things that they need. They'll accept you as you and not as, oh, that's the person that uses this Z lens or S lens or C lens or whatever the lenses are. In my mind, you don't buy solidarity. You create it through positive interactions with like-minded people. So you don't just pick up a new camera and all of a sudden you're part of this cool kid group. You might think that, but in the end, you're just a person that has the same camera as them. When you interact with other creatives and you share ideas and share techniques sometimes and stories, and you can bounce things off each other, whether it be about a very specific item that you're using, which could be a brand-related thing, or about creativity and philosophy in general, like we're talking about here. That's how you build solidarity. That's how you build these communities around photographers. Communities that are built up on a certain brand will always crumble in the long run. People are going to be a fan of something until they decide they want to be a fan of something else, right? And you want your clients to always be a fan of you, not a fan of the brand you're using. Oh, we're looking for a photographer that uses this or shoots this. Those aren't the clients you want. What you want is a client that wants you. You want a client that wants you, not your brands, not the gimmicks, not some technique or trend that's going on right now on Instagram. You want somebody to look at you and go, hey, in my case, Daniel, I see that on Instagram they're using a lot of smoke bombs. We want to do a shoot like that. Can you make a proposal? And then you could say, yeah, sure, I can, because you're versatile, right? That's the idea. If instead you're working with people who only hired you because you did the smoke bomb thing, and then next week when colored gels are popular, they hire somebody else, that's never going to be a long-term client. And the same is true as if they're after a brand. Hey, we're hiring you because you have this latest, greatest camera. Okay, well, somebody else can buy that camera too. You don't buy that, right? You don't buy a good client. You work hard, you create things, you connect with them. That's how you have long-term clients. And the thing is, you will always be growing, right? You should always be out there expanding, learning new things, trying different gear, trying different techniques, trying all these things. That way you will be ready when the client approaches you with a certain job. And this is where we want to be at. And that growing should go way beyond just buying something, right? I'm not saying don't buy new stuff. Obviously, buy stuff. It's good to keep the progress going. These brand wars are in a way good, right? Because they help lower the prices. They help add technology. So I'm not saying they're bad. The thing is, as a creator, we're always growing, changing, and adapting. And that might mean someday using different gear. It might mean upgrading. It might mean using a different brand for something. There's lots of tools out there, and we want to use the tool that's most appropriate for us. So next time you're in a photo community and somebody joins and they ask a question about a brand that you don't use, or for some reason you think your brand is better, instead of immediately saying, oh, well, you should have bought the blah, 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 why not help them? Why not try to gain and associate a friend, somebody in your community that you can grow and learn from together, even though you're not using the same brand? Now, am I saying that fandoms and people following brands and liking that is bad? Not entirely. I think that the idea of making a connection initially with groups because you use a brand is a good thing. It's a way for you to kind of break the ice, right? It's kind of like if you go to a photo meetup that's for people that have a certain new camera because maybe the brand's putting it on and you want to learn how to use that camera, you go to it. It's the same as going to a photo meetup that's about, let's say, portrait photography, and you want to go because you want to meet people that make portraits. There's nothing wrong with it when it's bringing people together. What I want to propose is a problem, if you will, is when it separates people and puts them in categories and pushes people away because they're not using that same thing as you, because they haven't followed that path that you've followed. Because honestly, when you look back, I don't know where you are in your career, when you look back, you'll probably find yourself working through many brands. There's few people that stick with one brand their whole career. And it's not because, hopefully it's not because of trends and things. It's usually because you just need to change for one reason or the other. There's something that was offered somewhere else, you started using it, and next thing you know, you're using something else. I always talk about being brand agnostic. Myself, I use all kinds of brands, and I see benefits at all the different brands. And people will often come to me and be like, hey, Daniel, I didn't know you were a Canon guy or a Nikon guy or a Sony guy or a Leica guy or an Olympus guy or a Panasonic guy or a Blackmagic. I'm trying to name as many things. But you know what? I'm all that and more because I'm me. I'm a photographer. I use different things. I use the tools that's appropriate. My value is not set based on the cameras that are in my bag or in my studio. My value is not set on the lighting gear that I use. My value is not set on any of that. My value is about me as a creator, about things I can put out there, my vision, my ability to work with clients. That's what gives my work value, not the camera I shot it with. that is just a layer of many layers that create a piece of art or a piece of photography. So next time you encounter another photographer and they come up to you and they say, hey, what do you shoot? And I know what a lot of you say when that happens. You name the camera you use. I'm going to challenge you to not say that. Rather, say the type of photography that you do, or the type of photography that you aspire to do. I'm Daniel. I'm a portrait photographer. What do you shoot? So give me a call and let me know. I'd love to know what you guys shoot. What do you think about this? Do you follow these brand trends? Do you only use one brand? Have you switched brands recently? Is there a reason for it? Do you like these very small niche groups that are brand centric? Is that something that is positive for you and you have kind of the rebuttal to this? I would love to hear it in a call or a message. And at the end of the show, we'll talk about how you can do that. Okay, so we have several great calls today. This first one is from Nicky.
Hi, Daniel. This is Nicky. I'm not a photographer, but I do have a few things to say about the importance of taking collective action and working together towards accomplishing a goal or towards learning something new. I do an exercise routine, and before COVID started, it was always done in a group, always, because it was a very intense exercise that required a lot of energy, and you fed off the energy of the other members of the class. So as they pushed, you pushed, and their failures became your failures, and you lifted each other up, and you encouraged them to improve next time. And just the energy in the room would send you to places that you wouldn't have gotten if you'd just done the exercise at home. And of course, you can do the exercise at home, and you can be successful. But I really think there is no substitute for that feeling that you get when you have many, many people all headed the same direction.
Yeah, that's a great point there. I talked about going to classes and this kind of thing, but certainly working together, the camaraderie of kind of all trying to accomplish the same goal. One of the things that I often do, I may have mentioned this before, was when I do a photo walk or any of these kind of things, I try not to set up a situation where it's like, here's the thing, and now just take the picture. I try to get everybody involved. I have people hold lights. I have people meter. I have people, actually do the test shots instead of me just doing it, because I think everybody working together as a group actually forms a kind of a nicer situation instead of it just staring at me doing everything. Plus, I'm probably also partially lazy, but beyond that, I think it actually is really good, seriously, to get people involved in the actual action of creation as a group, because I think what they can achieve there is much more powerful than just one single person.
So to continue that thought, when you were talking about how teachers gain all of their energy or some of their enthusiasm from their students, I couldn't agree more. I also taught college for several years, and the students gave me what I needed in order to teach them effectively. They were energetic, they were inquisitive, they were curious. It was so neat to see when they finally grasped a concept that might have been eluding them for several weeks over the class, to finally have that aha moment, as you say, and see them really understand it and absorb the information, and know that you, in a small way, helped them with that is a really big accomplishment. And I think that's why this idea of collective action, of collaborating with creatives, and just essentially working with other people to learn things and gain knowledge is so important. So I thought this was a fantastic podcast. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree, obviously, with you agreeing with me. If that makes sense. I think that one reason why we teach is to get something from those we teach. Either it's just the energy or also, we learn, right? We learn by doing, we learn by interacting. So yeah, teaching is such a valuable thing. And I recommend anybody out there that is doing any kind of anything. It could be art. It could just be any other kind of skill that you might have that others want to learn. I recommend finding a way to teach to people. I think that you will find that you'll gain as much as you give. Okay, now I have an email that was sent by someone there. It's signed A, so that is how I shall address them. And I will read it, and then I'll give you my comments on it. Hi, Daniel. Great podcast, and thanks for your informative YouTube videos. My comment has to do with photography as art. I have read several articles and watched some videos, and most come to the conclusion that photography is not to be considered art. I'm sure you're familiar with the arguments, most of which come down to the notion that photography is just using technology to capture an image. Therefore, it's easy and doesn't really require any skill. Now, I understand what art is considered to be from a classical standpoint, but limiting the definition of art to what was technologically available during the Renaissance is the same as saying rock music isn't music because there were no electric guitars during the Baroque period. The world changes, and in my opinion, the definition of what is art should change with it. Okay. Not long ago, I had an artistic landscape photo receive recognition in one of the better-known international photo competitions. An artist friend of mine, a painter, loved it so much that she wanted to copy a copy much larger than even the one I printed for myself. Okay, cool. When it arrived, I gave it to her. She admired it and said, "Your camera takes such good pictures." Any notion that I'd done anything more than pointing the camera and clicking the shutter was lost on her. So here are my questions. 1, do you think it matters whether photography is considered to be art by other artists and by the general public? And number 2, if so, is there anything we as photographers can do to at least start nudge other artists in public in the direction of recognition of photography as art? Okay, well, it's a lot of things to unpack here, so I will start at the beginning. Do I consider photography to be art? Yes, but what I will say is that my definition of art has nothing to do with the medium to which the art is crafted or with which the art is crafted. Art is something that moves the viewer, the listener, if it's music, or the intent is to have them move them. Maybe in a positive manner, that is like uplift them, make them feel happy, maybe in a negative manner in a sense, right? To make them feel sad or to draw emotion. But the point of art is to share and elicit emotion. A poem, right, could be art. A song could be art. A sculpture could be art. A painting could be art. A photograph could be art. A play, right, is art. A movie could be art. Now, whether or not this definition seems to hold in some places that you're searching, I always say when you're on the internet, you find what you look for. So I have not seen a lot of people say that photography is not art. I think early on, the first photographers, if you will, were typically not or wouldn't consider themselves artists. They considered themselves more scientists. They looked at it more from the technology point. They often were historians, so maybe they didn't consider themselves artists in that sense. They were trying to capture what was happening. But quickly, people shifted and started to try to create art that would evoke emotion, or photography that would evoke emotion. And once that is on the table, as they say, then I think you're in the realm of art. So yes, I think it's art. I don't think it's limited by any kind of media, so I don't know about painting versus art. Now, there's also, I don't know. People can call in and we can discuss this more, but there is, of course, the difference between what we call fine art and modern art. And then there's also craft, which can be interesting if you really want to start to really analyze things. None of this should be considered better or worse than any other. They're just different. Fine art is all about the beauty, right? You make fine art just to look at it and for art's sake itself. Modern art is often something that is used to make a point or to make a statement, right? And craft can be beautiful and it's usually more practical. Those are general. I'm being very general here. After 4 years of art history in college, that's what you get is one sentence from me. But that's a super basic breakdown that I think a lot of people would agree on that are in the art world. I'm not sure who's saying because it's easy, it's not art. That doesn't really make sense to me. For some people, things come easy. Some people doesn't. So do I care if people consider photography art? I mean, it doesn't matter to me so much personally if somebody thinks I'm an artist or not. I think that if you look at respected museums, you will find photography there. So that in and of itself tells you that at least the art world does consider some photography art. So I think that's that. Whatever internet people say, I do not know. But if you're trying to say what is or what isn't and trying to define it, I think I would go to those sources. If so how can we nudge artists? Well, I think that if you're having this conversation and you enjoy these kinds of conversations with people and you want to make your point, I would lean on heavily on what I just said. Art is about emotion and about feeling. And I think that you could easily say that some photography draws that. Does all photography do it? No. Does all painting do it? No. Does all sculpture do it? I've made tons of clay sculptures when I was in, fifth grade that definitely were not eliciting any emotion from anybody, except maybe we wasted our money on that clay. So yeah, I joke, of course, but yes. But I'm going to actually, it's not one of your questions, but I want to address the your camera takes a good picture thing. What I want to say there is this. I think that we as photographers are oftentimes overly sensitive to things. And when somebody says that, I believe that, well, at least in this case, they're probably looking at the resolution of the print, and having printed things themselves or looked at them on their phone or wherever, probably never seen such good definition and such in the image. And that's what I think there. I don't think that they're necessarily saying that you didn't have any artistic effort. I'm, of course, giving them the benefit of the doubt. If somebody looks at your entire portfolio printed small or on your phone and they say something like that, then maybe they're in that position where they don't really understand the technique or whatever that goes into it. As is said to me every single time I make a video, you couldn't take a bad picture of that person anyways. So yes, I know how you feel, but the reality is that I think in your case, at least, somebody who seems to be known in the arts, they probably just haven't seen a picture printed as well as that. So there is something to be said for the camera itself being important, especially in making a large print. That being said, if people don't understand that photography requires skill, you can then, without, being, let's say, upset or argumentative, you could just go into the process of creating the image and say, oh yes, it's great. It was able to pick up the resolution, of these flowers here. I waited 3 hours. I scoped out this place to find exactly that light, reflecting. And I think the camera did a great job picking it up. If I had used some other camera, it probably wouldn't have done it. And of course, if I had come during a different time of day or a different place, or I hadn't put the camera where it was, then we wouldn't have the image at all, and that in and of itself is kind of explaining to the person that there's more to it than the camera, but the camera is definitely part of it. So anyways, that being said, thank you so much, A, for writing in. I hope that answers your questions. If you have more to say, feel free to write in again or call in. Anybody who has something to say on this point, please feel free to give me a call or write in, because it's definitely an area to be discussed. I don't know there is really a right answer to, how to convince people what's art and what's not art. I don't think it actually matters to me too much. So, but if it matters to you guys, I'm certainly willing to talk about it because it's definitely an interesting subject. And on that note, I have a voice message from Stan about that very subject.
Hi, Daniel. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Not really. Obviously, we're all short-time listeners to your new podcast, which I am loving, by the way. But my question has to do with whether photography is an art form or a craft. I believe it's an art form, but I graduated college in 1981, and I did not get an art degree, but I had friends who were getting art degrees. One was a photographer, and this whole idea of art versus craft was a debate back then in the early 80s. And I'm wondering whether you actually ever experienced this debate in your career, and if you have, how it might have changed over the years. I hope you find this topic worth discussing, and if you do, I look forward to hearing my question on your podcast. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Stan. I don't know if you got together with A and you guys had if you guys are buddies or whatever, but that's kind of interesting, right? Yes. So this is definitely a thing. I think that what I'll say is this, and this is where it becomes really convoluted. And whenever you're discussing art, everything's convoluted. I think that all photography is a craft in the sense that the nature of craft is this like creation of something from nothing, right? And all photography falls into that. Whether or not it's all art, art's different, right? Art is about evoking emotion. So can you say as I said to A, can you generally say, well, all painting is art? No, of course not. Some painting is craft, right? If you're finger painting in third grade, that's probably craft, I would say. If you're painting little flowers on a vase that you're going to put in your windowsill, that's probably craft. Some people might say, well, all craft is art, it's a subset, whatever. I mean, if you want to get into those kind of debates, obviously, maybe that is a subject. Maybe we'll do an entire episode on this subject because it is a very good one. So I might, kind of put my thoughts together and do something a little longer. But what I'll say here is that if I was given the question, which I am, is photography an art or a craft? I would say it is both. I would say it's always a craft and sometimes an art. It really just depends on what you're trying to do with the photography. That will make it, and I'm doing finger quotes here, only a craft. Again, not trying to lower craft down below art, because I think some people that make these kind of conversations, that's what they are doing. And I definitely don't see art being above craft. I think it's just a little different. Craft generally has to do with practicality and working with something. Art has to do with emotion. So when approached with such a question, about art, it's always good to be vague, as I am. But like I said, if I had to make a straight up, is it or isn't it, I would say that all photography is on some level a craft, and some photography is art, depending on its intention. There is also the photography that is just like a practical nature, using as a tool. Whether that falls into craft or not, that kind of comes down to debate. It could be 500 years from now, people will look at some of these pictures that we took of, the picture I take of my porch when I'm trying to figure out how many nails I need to put the new board on, and they might call that craft somehow. But I don't think so. I think probably the nature of it, the shots of the family that we're just doing for fun, that's just a quick shot you throw up on your Instagram stories, those probably fall more under a craft category in my mind. Stuff that you just mess with, digital art, stuff like that, falls more into the craft category, whereas things that, again, are done to evoke an emotion, those are probably going to fall more into the artistic category, in my definition. But yeah, let's hear from people. Let's see what they have to say, and maybe I will have more to say as well. All right, and we have a call from Laurence, who was one of the first callers to the show.
Hello, Daniel. It's Laurence from Newcastle in the UK. You've asked for contributions to the question of the why we do photography. For me, it's twofold. First, it's the stretch, doing something that's outside of one's comfort zone, which results in a good feeling when things go well. When I was younger, I'd climb over rocks by the coast to capture great seascapes. Nowadays, it's more weddings or commercial work, but the desire to achieve good results persists. Secondly, it's the positive impact we can have. We all appreciate it when we've tried our best to capture the emotions of a wedding day, and people thank us for our efforts. When Mother's Day or Father's Day comes around each year, I see many of my images from weddings shared on social media. If we fast forward another 50 years, I'm sure that these images will be of immense importance to their families. When I finish shooting weddings and commercial work, then I'll return to seascapes, and I'll still embrace the fact that the why is the challenge and the result. Thanks, Daniel. All the best, Laurence.
Thanks, Laurence. That's great. I love that. The challenge, right? The wanting to create something that is lasting on some level, or that touches people, exploring places that you've not explored before, or giving people the memories that they'll have, for a lifetime, or that their children will have for a lifetime. I think that's a great reason why, and a good reason to keep on shooting. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks to my callers and those who wrote in: Nicky, A, Scott, and Laurence. If you'd like to hear your voice on the show, you can leave me a message using the Anchor app. I'll put a link in the show notes and description below. You could also record a voice memo and email it to me at adoremavoice@gmail.com. If you'd like me to read a message you send to me, you could also email me at that same address. You could reach out to me on Adorema's Discord server, which I'll put a link in the description. I'm looking forward to hearing your voice on the show. I'll talk to you soon.